25 years ago, Roberta Bondar became the first Canadian woman and first neurologist to blast off into space. She spent 8 days orbiting the Earth and has hardly slowed down since. It's a great pleasure to welcome Roberta Bondar to our studio today. Welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Does it seem like 25 years ago?
Some days it does, but those days are infrequent. It does feel like it's 5 years ago. It just feels very, very fresh. I guess because I talk about it all the time, but it really was quite an extraordinary event.
I read that liftoff on that day was delayed by an hour. And considering that the Challenger accident was in recent memory, how were you feeling before you boarded?
Well, early in the morning, because they got us up pretty early to fly, I realized I hadn't left much of a voice message for my mother. So I decided I would tape a little cassette for her and just say, you know, if anything happens to me, Mom, and I'd have to turn the thing off, and I was crying, and I'd turn it back on, and I'd do a few more seconds, and I'd turn it off again. So I think right before the flight, I kind of purged all of that terrible emotion that some of us have when we have knots in our stomach. And it just lasted just for maybe the whole time I did the tape. After that, I was fine. And when we went out to the launch pad, it was obvious that we were professionals going to do our job, but also we were quite exuberant and happy to be doing something that is kind of an unusual thing to do. Mm-hmm. So we were well prepared, optimized for the flight at that moment. So it was, we were feeling pretty confident about the roles that we could play.
I want to play a little bit of the takeoff right now.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. We have 3 main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery and the first International Microgravity Laboratory.
And as you were taking off, what was going through your mind?
Well, we had a couple of checklists in case there was a repeat of the Challenger accident. So for 2 minutes and 6 seconds when the solid rockets are on, kind of living a bit of tension there, wondering if we're going to get through it. And as soon as they say go for throttle up, that's the moment of truth. That's what the Challenger accident was all about. So we had to really concentrate on what would happen if we had a repeat of the Challenger current. There's nothing we could have done except just try to get out the side hatch door if it's separated from the main shuttle. So it's that kind of safety thing we were thinking about.
But once you're on there, I guess you're resigned to whatever happens.
Yes, there's a range safety officer with a hand right over an explosive button and said, you know, we'll blow you up if you start going asymmetrical or it doesn't look like you're flying right. Mm-hmm. We'll just say that's goodbye crew. So we live with that, train knowing that might happen, hoping that doesn't, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's always to be very, very focused on that moment, be very professional about what it is that you can or can't do. Mm-hmm. We've trained the best we can. And of course, you can't train totally for an explosion, but we train for bits and pieces that might save 1 life or 2 lives.
So at no point did you have a thought like, oh, wow, what did I get myself into?
No, I think that happened a lot earlier.
What was it like once you reached orbit?
It's quite amazing. I don't think people realize that the last 45 seconds are really the hardest, or they were the hardest for the space shuttle, because it's the equivalent of having 3 times your body weight sitting in your chest and trying to breathe. So basically, you're panting for 45 seconds. It's very uncomfortable. And then suddenly, when the main engines cut out, it's like the brakes went on. But then when people drive a car and the brakes go on, they feel like they're going to go forward. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that, except you kind of float forward and you don't come back again until you come back into Earth's atmosphere and back into the gravitational pull of the planet.
How often do you think about your time in space? I know you do a lot of talks and stuff, but how often, like on your own personal time, do you think about it?
I think about it a fair bit because it has affected the way I view the world around me.
How so?
I look at the Earth really differently now. I looked at it in space, I think, with a new eye. I wanted to. And I'm maturing in that view. Even though I'm not in space to see it, mm-hmm. I carry with me that reality check that the Earth is a planet and we have finite resources. It's a most amazing thing if one can keep that kind of vision alive and evolve with it.
Maybe it feels like everybody should have the opportunity to go into space to maybe take better care of the planet.
I think people with level heads should, yes. I mean, there are people who'd probably see it and say, oh, wow, look what we've got here. We've got to take the whole thing over.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I mean, if most people could really, really, really look at the Earth in its isolation, I think people would probably, at least for a while, be much more committed to try to deal with what we have here.
Is there a moment from your 8 days up there that has stuck with you?
I always feel that being at the top of Lake Winnipeg and looking across and seeing Lake Superior and then my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie and hearing the national anthem, that has to be one of the biggest highlights of my life. To see the country and to see where I was from and know that people were there trying to reach up to me with their thoughts and their blessings and the goodwill. And I think it's that the goodwill of people and the goodness of people that I missed being able to see, and I had to imagine through my emotions about feeling them, but seeing that across the country and having that as a visual memory was very, very important to me.
Obviously, Canadians are very, very proud of you and of your achievement, but I'm thinking for the people from your hometown, this is it's a much bigger thing for them. It's extra special. What did it mean for you coming from the Soo to achieve this incredible feat?
I was very lucky that my parents were born in Sault Ste. Marie and lived their whole lives in the Soo, because it's a place that's situated so much on the water. It has the land. It just takes, within minutes, you're in the natural environment of our country. To be from that and have those traditional values that I had growing up, to be able to be in volunteer groups, to have all the kinds of beautiful community spirit that was there and still is, I think it allowed me to really represent those kinds of values that I believe that a lot of Canadians share. It's the one thing that I felt that I could take with me in space, was to be able to be a true Canadian. And I think being from that particular place, that community, really, I feel, reflects on a lot of our values that we have as Canadians.
And for your professional work, you were the first neurologist to travel to space. What did that mean for your work?
A lot of the experiments that we were doing on my particular space flight dealt with how the human body adapts to space flight and then readapts to Earth's gravitational field. And for something like 10 years afterwards, I headed an international space medicine research team looking at various aspects of space flight and how we could look at some of the things we were developing to try to make life better here on Earth, whether it's with people with Parkinson's disease or spinal cord injuries. So I felt a very deep connection with my specialty and my subspecialty of neuro-ophthalmology with the space program. And because I was able to do the experiments in flight and report back to my community of neurologists, I felt that we strengthened some of the research ties that we have between terrestrial-based medicine and space medicine.
In your 2002 book, Canada, A Landscape of Dreams, you photographed two views of your home, Canada. Which view do you like better, here or there?
Well, both views are so important to us. The view from space of Canada, or the view of space from anywhere on the planet, makes me realize that we have patterns and views that are individual, but they're also so different. If we move away, we see a different aspect of life, different patterns. And it's that rejuvenation, I think. The rejuvenation, it's analogous to seeing someone we haven't seen before in 3 dimensions. It's trying to develop a new way of viewing something that we have taken for granted. And when we're back, at least when I'm back on the planet, I actually am more sensitive now to different patterns. I look for them. I look for the things that I might have walked past before. So that the view from space has sensitized me to have even a more beautiful view of the view that I have here on the planet.
Is that why you became interested in photography?
I've always been interested in photography. I had a camera. My uncle was a professional, semi-professional photographer, but he was the Northern Ontario rep for a couple of very high-end cameras. And he loaned cameras to my dad all the time, who just loved photography. So I've got like 40 hours of me growing up from the time I was 2, and that was really something back in the 40s and 50s. So cameras always were important, and then I professionally trained in at Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, California, in landscape and nature photography. But remember, we had 13 different camera types, including IMAX, on my flight, and I was trained in all of them, and especially with the Earth observation people, and I was on their team taking pictures of the Earth from
It must
space.
have been a thrill to be able to do that.
It is. I made it my mission, actually, before my flight to look at every image I could possibly get my hands on and my eyes on to see the Earth in different angles. Because when we cross the Earth, it's not like seeing the map that we're so used to in school.
The flat one, yep.
The flat one, and also the north being the top and the south being at the bottom, because both space station and the shuttle fly and used to fly across in sort of an oblique angle to the planet. So you see things upside down or in a relationship that you can't normally recognize, right? So it was just great to be able to look at all these images, different angles, and then to go into space and be able to recognize these places on the planet.
Now, you've started something called the Bondar Challenge. What is that?
My foundation, the Roberta Bondar Foundation, is a not-for-profit educational foundation trying to connect and reconnect people to the natural world. One of our mechanisms is to run what we call Bondar Challenge, and we have it in different venues. We partner with people like the Metro Zoo, Parks Canada for a wilderness challenge up in the Northwest Territories. We have partnered with the Canadian Camping Association to actually sensitize people to the natural environment. So it's a program at the end of which the people who participate can submit a photograph and basically an artist statement or something that talks about how they were connected with the image that they have photographed. But we train them about how to look at things. We train people how to use a camera, the artistic aspects of photography. So hopefully getting people to connect through nature better, actually going through the LCD screen of a camera or through the traditional viewfinder on a camera.
And what does it mean to you to see kids connecting with the natural environment?
Well, it means a lot. And I also think that it's important for it to be cross-generational because what we don't want is adolescents to say, oh, that's a kid value, or adults to say, well, that's for kids to fix. We want to have that embedded in the youth, but have that in a way that they can have it right through and as a value right through to being an adult, because kids are not stupid. They can look at an adult who says, hey, you know, the environment's not very important to you, so it doesn't have to be important to me after I leave grade 8. So we're trying very hard through our traveling exhibitions to try to help people connect to the natural environment across all age groups.
I read something that you said. You said that it's important for educators to not make kids biased against science. What did you mean by that?
Well, it just takes one person to say, you don't worry about those science courses, I never did well in them. I mean, that is the kiss of death. And it's the kiss of death about creativity and about the future of the planet. If people are going to have jobs in the future, people have to be creative and innovative. Even if they're skills related, let alone research related, people really need to have a background in something. And science, the traditional science, it's very important to help us with our thinking skills. They help us approach problems. I mean, you could even apply that thinking skill to voting for individuals. So it's all about understanding what words mean. It's all about understanding concepts and how we can appreciate all the things that we have in the world, whether it's arts or science, to help us become different people, to become more engaged in our community.
And now the Director General of Space Exploration at the Canadian Space Agency, Gilles Leclerc, called you a Renaissance woman. Do you consider yourself that?
I have been called a Renaissance woman, and it's quite a compliment. I mean, it's hard for me to self-express that. I have always felt that I am a wonderful blend of my family. My mother was very creative. She was a wonderful teacher, beautiful penmanship. She was just a marvelous person, curiosity. My dad was very technical. He was very good with the cameras. He was very good at making things. They were both very good role models. So the blend of the two, for me, has allowed me to be who I am. And my sister is a very creative individual who now deals a lot with our science concepts for our foundation and all the materials that we develop. So I feel that I'm very well positioned to have an eclectic skill set. I mean, let's face it, I have a few degrees and a few years of experience, but there's a point where one says, what do you want to do next? And for me, that predicates all these wonderful skill sets I've had before and world experience and beyond the world experience.
So what do you want to do next?
I'm going to move forward, we're moving the foundation forward to try to have more international engagement. We run projects in Kenya right now with a trust out of London, England, that look at young women and try to help them with their secondary education, secondary school, and then post-secondary school education. So we're trying to do more with the natural environment in some of the countries in Africa, trying to, in an education role. Plus, I still have my little ties with NASA, with the Earth observation people, as a principal investigator looking at migratory flyways. Of course, we have whooping cranes in Canada that fly all the way down to Aransas in the Gulf of Mexico area in the October winter. So the whole business about how countries have political boundaries, but birds don't have political boundaries, but they require all this habitat. So one of the things that I'm very interested in is birds, and continuing my photography of birds and animals in their environment to try to help people get a handle on our beautiful natural world.
When you look back at your life, did you ever think that you would become Canada's first woman in space?
I never thought of that title, but when I was growing up and I put my own plastic model rockets together when I was about 8, so that would take me into the early 1950s. It was a time when I really did, I had that wonderful courage of youth and that curiosity we should have all of our lives, to be able to look up at the night sky and have dreams and have ideas about what would be out there, and put myself into the role of being a spaceman, because nothing had left the planet when I was growing up. So the idea of wanting to be there, I believe really firmly deep down that if I ever had that opportunity, that I had to have the skill set in order to be able to seize that opportunity. And so that's what I made my life to do. It was really trying to be prepared.
I mean, most of us will never have the opportunity to go into space. But you've said that doing that is not the most important thing that you've done, but being a doctor is.
Being a physician is the number one thing for me.
Why is that?
Well, I wouldn't have been an astronaut if I hadn't been a physician, I am sure of that. But also it's allowed me to do many things. It's in some ways it's like the key to the universe. It allows me to be able to understand people better. And I'm talking about not just physiologically, but why people react the way they do, or things about taking care of one's health. I've been able to help save lives. I've been able to put people on a path so that they can live a healthy life. And all those things are very, very important. I mean, there's so many specialties, subspecialties of medicine, but I do know for a fact that I'm not going to be an astronaut, says I, when I'm younger, if I don't have some skill set that they could use, because what is an astronaut? We start thinking about it, what does an astronaut do? And even if you're an engineer, you get sick. So you'll always need doctors, right? So it was a pretty good thing to pick.
You had a good backup.
I think so.
The Canadian Space Agency recently announced their shortlist for Canada's next astronaut. Of the 70 people who made it past the first stage, 23 were women. Would you like to see more Canadian female astronauts?
I'd love to see us have more ability to fly more astronauts, and I think that will happen in the future.
Doesn't matter men, male or female?
We have to have good ones, and we have to represent what our population is. We have to have representation of all the cultures that we have in our country, but there are not that many astronaut positions to do that. So if we look at the biggest populations differences, we're looking at gender. So yes, we need to have both men and women participate. And I've actually looked online at the qualifications of these individuals, and both men and women are highly qualified. It'll be very, very difficult for them to sort out and tease out the little bits and pieces that are required in order to put one person above another. But we must have representation of both genders. There's no question here in Canada. I mean, we really do.
Why do you think there's not that many?
Well, I think one, I'd have to address all the issues that women have traditionally faced, and that is that whether it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, you need to have some safety net in place to take care of basically who you are, and that is women have a biological cycle. And so society traditionally has not been able to really address how do we manage a biological role for women and a professional role that may not be related to being a mother. There's something else that someone is very good at and wants to do and can be fulfilled doing it. And our society needs that person. So I think we have to change the way we have traditionally had society. And I think we're making headway with childcare and programs and everything. But you know, it's the beginning days of trying to, I wouldn't want to say even the playing field, although it does amount to that, but providing a safety net for the gender that requires it in order to make both genders available to move our society forward.
I'd like to show you a video of Elon Musk, and he's talking on why humans should become a multi-planet species.
There are really two fundamental paths. History is going to bifurcate along two directions. One path is we stay on Earth forever, and then there will be some eventual extinction event. I don't have an immediate doomsday prophecy, but eventually history suggests there will be some doomsday event. The alternative is to become a spacefaring civilization and a multi-planet species, which I hope you would agree that is the right way to go.
Do you agree? Should humans become a multi-planet species?
Well, he made a very good point at the beginning, and that is there will be some other event, and we know the sun is going to be, if we don't have anything before then, we know the sun is going to become a red giant, and by that point, the Earth will cease to exist the way it is. So somewhere down the road, we'll have at least that to deal with. And I think that right now we are making really baby steps. I mean, we're not even putting the shoes on yet. If people talk about going to Mars, I think the first thing we have to do is go to the moon and deal with some of the things like radiation. There are a lot of genetic things that we have to deal with that we just don't know about at the moment in terms of chromosome breaks and telomeres and things. So I think that, yes, if we want to have life continue the way we would like to have life, thinking that we can be somewhere in the universe, then yes, we have to start reaching out. But my ethical feeling is that we need to do it in a reasonable, logical manner. It's a very expensive, space is an expensive proposition, and it really does require international collaboration.
Should we be going to Mars or setting our sights on another planet?
I think we should be going to Mars eventually, but as I said, I think we should go to the moon first and try some things out. I mean, I just don't think we have all the answers yet technically, and certainly not physiologically, obviously ethically and morally. We have a lot to learn.
In 2018, Canadian astronaut David Saint-Jacques will be launched in a Soyuz spacecraft to the International Space Station. What advice do you have for him?
Well, David and I had a few chats about the kinds of things. I mean, there's so much to try to pass on to someone, but I think the bottom line is one has to get away from work and really enjoy the experience, because it's very hard to capture the reality of a moment and try to recreate that with all the feelings that one has. And I mentioned earlier about evolving one's view of the planet or one's view of one's life. And to go into space for David, he really has to back away from some of the tremendous responsibilities that we'll have on space station, and to be able to try to create for himself his own personal legacy to himself about what that experience means when he comes back, when he has time to resort and sort of think about some of these things. And you just have to do it when you're there.
To celebrate Canada's 150th anniversary, the mayor of your hometown, Sault Ste. Marie, proclaimed January the 22nd to 30th would be Dr. Bondar Days in your honor. What do you hope Canadians will accomplish in the next 150 years?
Well, I'm first of all, I want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled that they were able to do this. It's the 25th anniversary of my space flight, so the days that he proclaimed were the days involved in my flight 25 years ago. I start thinking even 25 years in the future. I can't even vault to the 150. But if I vaulted even to the 25 years, one would hope that Canada is in a place that globally has such a wonderful record for embracing different cultures and different attitudes, that we can develop our country of people who flock to our country and develop a country of innovators and creators and people who have a more advanced view of where we can be as a society, as a life form, and that we become role models for the rest of the planet. So for the 125 years after that, that we can build on that and even be better.
And looking 25 years since you accomplished this great feat, is there anything that you did on the shuttle that we don't know about, you've never talked about? Anything cheeky you might have done on there?
Well, there was one thing I've already said publicly that got a bit of attention, my reenactment of 2001 in the embryo scene for the planet, where I tucked up and floated around without the benefit of any clothes on me in front of the window in the dressing chamber area that we had, and somebody said to me, "Weren't you nervous?" I said, "About what? That somebody might see you? Like, we're traveling at Mach 25, 8 kilometers a second or something. I mean, you have to be pretty fast to catch me spinning." But that's the kind of thing. I think there are some things that we have that are very personal, hopefully, that when people fly that they like to do. And I sang, actually, the one thing that I did try to do is I tried to do that, When I'm Calling You piece. Jeanette MacDonald, I tried singing that. No, I'm not going to do that.
So you
I had to practice. I had to practice a lot before I did it. And then when I called down to the ground, I don't know. No one seemed to have heard me when I was doing this. And I had practiced it, and I thought my voice was pretty good, but it was like dead silence from the ground. So maybe we were going through a silent spot with the satellite coverage. I don't know.
Well, I'm sure it must have been marvelous. There's nothing that you can't do.
Oh, wow, that's very kind of you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure meeting you, Roberta Bondar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.